we blocked access to AI in our business using our firewall to stop shadow IT. Guess what happened? Everyone picked up their phones, right? They picked up their phones and they're using ChatGPT or whatever on their phones instead, because they can use 4G or 5G and get around the firewall. Simple solution to the problem. IT is blissfully unaware.
Hi everyone, my name is Pierre and welcome to Off the Cuff with Powell, where we chat with digital workplace experts across our partner community about what's really shaping the future of work. My name is Pierre. I lead the APAC region at Powell, where we help organizations make the most of Microsoft 365 with tools that connect people, simplify collaboration and boost engagement in the digital workplace. Today, I'm joined by Steve Knutson, founder and CEO of Stratos Technology Partners in New Zealand. Steve is a Microsoft Regional Director, and he brings a ton of experience helping organizations design and deliver modern workplaces on Microsoft 365. So today's topic, a trigger warning for anybody that doesn't like it. We're going to be talking about AI a lot, AI in the enterprise, and more specifically, what IT teams and business users can actually automate as of today. We'll dig into where AI makes sense inside Microsoft 365, how to adopt it responsibly, and what's really happening on the ground. So let's jump in. But before we do so, maybe, I'm not sure, Steve, if you want to quickly introduce yourself as well, what you do at Stratos.
Yeah, thank you, Pierre. Thanks for the opportunity to come and speak on Powell Off the Cuff. At Stratos, I'm a company founder, so we started Stratos 14 and a half years ago. We have a modern work and power platform practice, which is my sort of main area of responsibility. We also have a sort of software engineering side to the company as well. But I guess in my day-to-day role, I'm working as a consultant with our clients to help them get the best out of technology and show them what's possible.
Awesome. Thanks again for being here with us today, Steve, and really great to have you here. So to kick things off and maybe to set some context, obviously AI has been a buzzword for the last couple of years. Everybody's been talking about it. But in your experience, I was wondering, how are your enterprise clients actually approaching it? Are they still experimenting it broadly, or are they actually still trying to define the right use cases and guardrails?
Yeah, I think I'd say there's probably two groups. There's groups I would say were early adopters that have set up pilots. Some of them are starting to go beyond the pilot stage on sort of end user AI technologies. So Copilot, M365 Copilot, for example. And then we have another set of clients who are probably a little later to the table, who are still probably very early stage piloting, but haven't tackled the governance and questions around like how do they govern the environment, what the rules are for their team, how they're going to use it. And then there's probably a third group, which would be the innovative people are looking for, instead of general AI, looking for specific uses of AI for business problems. So they've identified the problems and then looking and saying, well, how do we use AI to solve that? And that's more Copilot Studio or developing with Azure OpenAI tools.
Yeah, awesome. And obviously a lot of the tools, well, we're seeing like two breeds of tools really out there, tools that are really user-friendly and tools that are really technical as well. So I was wondering, from your experience, like, do you see the use of AI being implemented more by business users directly, empowered to use whatever tools they want, or is it more driven by IT still?
That's a really good question. It depends a little bit on the organization. I would say some organizations that have strong governance around their technology platform and a higher level of maturity would have good rules around that, already around what tools to use, what the requirements are that you must meet to get a license, what the training is that you get once you've got a license, and so on. And then there's the other set where it's more shadow IT still. We see a lot of people using public AI tools. They don't have an official line on it in the company, but people individually understand that it's going to help them. And so they use what's available to them. So we're seeing quite a lot of that still. Yeah. And I think that's probably one of the big challenges for IT in general.
Okay. That makes sense. And if we get a little bit more practical, and especially within, I guess, the Microsoft 365 space, which is where most of us are working right now.
Yeah.
Are you seeing some specific areas where you're already seeing, automation or AI delivering real value today?
Yeah, definitely. I think probably two good examples. One would be in sales process where people are working on tendering, and they have a body of document content that they wanted to use to accelerate that sales process. So we're seeing a lot of use of AI as a sales enablement tool. So within those sorts of teams, and then I think more broadly in tech teams, everybody's got ChatGPT or Copilot or similar, and they are using it to do things, everything from writing PowerShell scripts to helping them with understanding problems and all sorts of innovative uses, but also quite strongly in some specific fields. So we work a lot in the legal space. We see law firms are very interested in AI because they have a very document-centric process around how they work. It's a lot about research, and it's a lot about then drafting and providing feedback and response. And so those are like strengths of generative AI in particular, and Copilot or similar tools in that space. I think it's very strong at the moment, and the maturity level of use is getting much better as well.
Yeah, quite interesting because we're seeing very similar use cases on our side, and even internally at Powell, I can vouch for the first use case you mentioned about sales. I mean, we have been experimenting, generative AI bots to help us draft RFP responses, respond to security questionnaires for already a couple of years. So definitely seeing something that we see across the board, really. And I guess for IT leaders that are listening today, if they're just starting their AI and automation journey in general, where would you say they should focus first? Like, is there any specific area they should look at, or any also area where you'd say just don't do it yet?
Yeah, I think for your average business user, office-based worker who spends a lot of time in meetings, the very first place to start is with meetings, meeting recaps, transcribing and catching up on meetings. That's a instant value creator for you. You'll save time and keep you more informed. Specifically, things like summarizing a document as well, and maybe using it to brainstorm creation of content. So getting past that white page problem where you've got a screen in front of you and you go, how do I start writing this thing? And I think anybody that's been, especially like myself, where I'm a manager of people who are maybe a generation younger than me, what I experienced at the beginning of ChatGPT coming out, for example, was a lot of correspondence from younger members of my team to me that had been clearly AI written because they didn't know how to write it themselves or didn't feel comfortable, so they felt more comfortable using AI to write the thing and send it to me, which was I thought it was quite an interesting behavior, and we still see that, right? So that's people's starting point now for things. So we're changing how we write. The things not to do, I think the biggest risk understanding in an organization, the thing to understand is what risk am I exposing myself to if I do something. And one of the big risks would be around exposure of privacy, where we've got an issue with oversharing of content, for example. And the reason we want to be careful about that is because we don't all think about AI at the same level. Our expectations are different as technologists than perhaps our end users are, who might go, if I just type a quick prompt, it's going to give me an answer, I'm going to trust it. Whereas we might not trust it as much as they do. And there's been numerous front page of the paper things recently where people have used AI to generate something without checking, for example, citations, and have produced something that's substandard or worse.
Any tips on spotting things within emails or text that are clearly generated by AI?
So the bullet point list, right? The bullet point list is the first thing I look for. And the language, it does as Kiwis over here in New Zealand, we don't speak the same as Americans, for example. So whereas GPT or Copilot tends to not use the same colloquial terms that we might use in things regularly through our day, and so that's kind of like a standout thing. There's a few other things, but like the bullet point list with a summarizing paragraph at the end is always a good sign as well. Okay, that's probably come from some sort of AI tool.
Yeah, probably the overuse of emojis as well. And for me, it's really the M dash, that long dash. It's only ChatGPT doing it.
Yes.
Awesome. And right now, when we look at AI in general within companies, and especially within your client base, obviously, do you see more traction with, more on the workflow automation side of things, or is it more on the content intelligence side of things with, AI helping, for example, to classify tags, metadata, and so on and so forth?
Let me probably, I'm going to qualify this a little bit. I think people are very interested in the ability to tag metadata onto documents, and until they understand that it's a consumption-based model for the tools, and that becomes a block. They're unsure. So, for example, if we're using some of the autofill metadata capabilities in SharePoint, there's a cost to running that, and understanding that cost is often a problem. I think the part of the puzzle that people haven't looked at yet is what's the value? What is the value that that's generating for me? And what we're seeing now with some of the things like the SharePoint Knowledge Agent, for example, which has been rolled out just recently, or is currently in preview, that allows an end user with a Copilot license to auto tag document content, and it's pretty cool, right? It's a pretty cool thing, up to a point in terms of scale. So you wouldn't use it for records management where you need formality around the metadata, but you would use it for those scenarios where you want to make documents a bit more discoverable for a team that's working on them, not necessarily the information management requirement where it's more formally tagged. Yeah. So, and I think also the other thing I'd say is that with workflow is people are still finding the balance between, when do we bring AI into a business process versus when is it just a workflow, because often the process might be simply an approval. We were approving something to happen. We use, for example, it was say it's approving the payment of something or approving a request of some sort, where you want to use AI then to go and check and say, help with that problem. Then the question you've got to really ask yourself at that point is like, is that something that we need AI for, or is it something that we can just do through some other technique? But the opportunity then, I think, with agents is more that taking the person out of the loop part. That's where we'll be heading. I see people experimenting with that now, but not really using it. It's because I think there's a trust factor in that, right? So if I'm approving payments and the payment has a matching purchase order and I can look those things up, then that's a no-brainer. Approve that. However, is the AI getting the correct data? Because it's not 100% accurate. It's going to give you some sort of confidence interval on the content in some cases. So how do we handle exceptions? It's got to be part of that process.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned something really important as well, which is value. And so from your experience, like, what separates companies that are already getting value from AI versus those that are just, dabbling with it?
Yeah, I think all of the research that's out at the moment is saying 95% of people aren't getting value yet.
Yeah,
they're still experimenting to get the value. I think where you would value is hard to measure as well. So for professional services organisations where you're selling your time for money, there's a threat there, but it might be that I can deliver better service for my clients by getting back to them faster because I'm using because AI is accelerated, allowing me to resolve things more quickly. The place, though, I think where the real value is measurable is when you have a business process and you can demonstrate that you've saved time in that process, or you've had to have people in the loop less. That's more measurable. And we've got examples of that with our clients. That's more Copilot Studio or custom Copilot technology where you're doing that. And so for example, the time that it takes to process an application form, if you can reduce that time, it has a time benefit for your administrative team. It also has a benefit in terms of improved customer service for the person whose application you're processing. So there's kind of more than one benefit that you might want to measure to see where the value is.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more with you. I mean, we're seeing similar things at Powell. We're starting to see the first couple of customer stories coming out in relation to our knowledge bots that we can implement within the intranet on SharePoint. And one very common success story right now is these FAQ bots where we take somebody within an HR team, a finance team, a team within the organization, and we try to find somebody who's always answering the same questions all day long to different users.
Yeah.
and create a bot for it and then measure how much time is
Yeah.
saved for that employee not having to answer the same questions over and over. So absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's a good example of that is that employee self-service. And I think that's something that you shouldn't underestimate, because there's a hidden cost in a person having to go and ask someone else how to do something, or whereas if they can solve it themselves on the spot and you've got some through the use of a chatbot to support them, then you haven't disturbed the other person, so they've carried on with their day, and you've also been able to solve your own problem quicker. So there's a benefit to you as well.
Exactly. And I guess another question that comes to mind now is, how can IT help business teams identify good AI use cases without, scaring them with complexity and risk?
Yeah. So this is actually a conversation I had with someone this morning, and I'm sure if he's probably going to listen to this, and he'll probably recognise my answer. So I think the first thing here is that we shouldn't expect necessarily that IT, just because we're in technology, are going to know how to solve every problem. However, what we can do is we can enable people to solve their own. And so by providing them with the tools and the guidance, and perhaps the inspiration. So facilitating the discussion within the business about how we're going to use AI, so that others can share their thoughts, and then that bringing together of minds is the powerful piece, because that creates the inspirational idea. And so IT can facilitate things like champions groups. We can manage the change management. Help people understand how AI can help them in their roles. That's often the change management piece might sit within IT as the enabler of it, but really, I think it's important to have the ownership of the problem stay with the business, because at the end of the day, if they don't have buy-in themselves, then the adoption will be poorer over time. So IT should be the enabler, but work hand in hand with the business to deliver the result. Yeah.
Perfect. Is it actually, that was my follow-up questions. I was going to ask you, seeing a lot more job titles these days with AI in the job title. And so I was wondering whether you think we need to have one AI champion or multiple AI champion within IT, or should it be a cross-functional thing with business users being involved?
Definitely wanted business users involved, but can I maybe I'm going to qualify this a little bit too. AI is different depending on your role. So if I'm in IT, and then I might look at AI differently than if I'm someone that's working in a sales team versus someone who's a manager, or versus someone who might be working as a frontline customer support person. So they all have, there's benefits for AI in all of those different roles, but their needs might be different. So I think it's not one size fits all, and we want to create solutions and options for people to that will fit to those different personas that we have within our business. So you were mentioning before about having a chatbot on your intranet, for example, that can help with customers self-service internal questions. Perhaps take that same scenario and provide a knowledge base that can be used by customer services people taking phone calls and answering emails from customers wherever they are. That can enable them to answer the question quickly, more efficiently, deal with the customer in a single touch rather than having to go backs and forwards. I don't know if you're like me and you've spent hours and hours on hold for an airline, for example, to make a change to a booking. Perhaps AI can help us with that. My personal experience with that is that AI and I won't mention the airline, but their chatbot could do better, right? It could understand like a flight change, for example, or my booking number. Yeah.
Awesome. And obviously, so we've now established how important it is for business and IT teams to collaborate in rolling out AI. And so I was wondering if you're seeing a shift in how organizations are approaching change management, skills, and adoption in general.
So yes, this is a classic problem in organisations. I'd say it's quite prevalent in New Zealand. We are not good at change management as in organisations in general. We underestimate how much time is needed, and we don't give credit to the amount of value that there is in doing the change. It's definitely better than it was 10 years ago, and people I think now understand the need for it, but we're still learning what that means. And so what you often see in an organisation is that they will do that internally. It will be the classic, we're going to send an email out to all staff and tell them this change is coming. and not a campaign where you're working on that across time and providing people with an understanding at the different stages in the journey that they're in. So following some sort of change management process. Larger organizations or more mature organizations will have people that have got experience with change management, and they might value that more and actually, as part of a rollout program, have a change manager involved in the process. That's more of a professional person rather than it's the IT guy also has to do the communication, also has to do the training, also has to do the support, right? So separating those roles out, I think, is really important. We're seeing more of it. It's definitely improving, but I would say we've got a long way to go before we're, I would say, great at it. As a country, I think that's like across the board. We've definitely got clients who are fantastic at change management, and we have others that it would be the last thing that crossed their mind when rolling out tech, regardless if it's AI or not.
And I was wondering also if you had any piece of advice to give to, say, a business. You've got a business user within an organization where maybe the IT team is a little bit reluctant on AI. And so I was wondering if you have a piece of advice to build a case to prove the value of AI so that they can go at scale and start implementing together with IT, of course.
Yeah, I would say it's not generally IT that has that issue. It's usually leadership. And I think there's two drivers for that. One is they don't understand what AI could do for them, and they think we're happy doing it doesn't apply to us. And I think that's kind of a bit of a head in the sand scenario. But we do have people that I would say even where other senior people in the organisation are like quite focused on that and can see the value, it's getting the approval to actually do an initiative that doesn't happen. Now, the problem is with that is that those people that don't get the approval to do the sort of the company-wide initiative will go away and do the little, hidden away shadow IT approach to rolling out AI, and it won't be cohesive, aligned with strategy or anything like that. So everybody should look at AI as a strategic, as both a threat and an opportunity. It's a threat to your business if you get behind, and it's an opportunity for you to take things to the next level if you look at it in the right way and have the right mindset. But often at the moment, I'd say there's some organisations that are definitely in the glass half empty camp where they are going, we know it's there, but we're ignoring it, or we don't see that it's strategic to our scenario. I've challenged that assumption though from them.
And you've just mentioned a huge concern for a lot of organizations, and understandably so, shadow IT. Shadow IT was a topic before AI, but I think AI is bringing a lot more shadow IT. I see a lot of organizations, although they have Copilot rolled out, still have users using their own GPT, using Claude, using their own AI tools where they have their own accounts. How do you see organizations preventing shadow IT and reducing that risk, really?
So I think people have, definitely anyone that's working with an MSP, if the MSP isn't helping them with understanding the shadow IT and putting things in place to help them manage it, then they should be asking for that. But actually, as an organisation themselves, this isn't an IT problem. It's an organisation business problem, because shadow IT is risking your intellectual property and commercially sensitive information. It's risking privacy, and it's meaning that you haven't got any strategy or controls around that, which is, if you haven't thought about that, then there's probably also other things in your business that you haven't thought about as well that you really should put some attention to. But in terms of like how people should deal with it, start with some basic rules around like what is important, what tools should we use, and why. You don't have to go very far on the internet to find good advice that is aligned from practically everyone on telling you what to do with that. If you haven't seen it, then you haven't looked, right? So I would say just start with thinking about what's our basic policy and just keep it simple. We're going to use this tool. We're going to not do these things. These are the way, and communicate it, out to people. These are the tools that you're allowed to use. We're approving these ones here. If you've got something else you want to use, come and talk to us, and we can discuss the pros and cons. But in terms of within the business, give people a path, so it's not a hard no. If you do a hard block, people are going to work around it. I heard a great one yesterday, actually. Somebody said, we blocked access to AI in our business using our firewall to stop shadow IT. Guess what happened? Everyone picked
Yeah.
up their phones, right? They picked up their phones and they're using ChatGPT or whatever on their phones instead, because they can use 4G or 5G and get around the firewall. Simple solution to the problem. IT's blissfully unaware. We've ticked the box. We've protected ourselves and the organisation. Well, no, you haven't really.
Yeah.
It's just moved the problem to somewhere else.
And I guess it eventually goes back to the change management piece we were discussing earlier. But this is a perfect segue actually to the next section I wanted to talk to you about, which is really about tools and platforms. So really being practical here. Obviously, you're very deep in the Microsoft space. You have a lot of insights also into what Microsoft is doing. So I was wondering, because when we talk about AI in Microsoft 365, we often jump straight to just Copilot. But I was wondering if there is anything else within the Microsoft ecosystem that is quietly transforming how people work.
Yeah. So I think starting point, like Copilot is a brand, and it has a whole lot of different experiences across the different products within the Microsoft ecosystem as a whole. And then we also have the professional sort of development tools that go with that also. But I guess the things where we're starting to see AI now is it's going away from it's supporting you in different places within the environment. So we have your classic chat GPT style interface that you've got where you can go into Copilot chat and you can just talk to it and ask questions. And then we've got things like agents like Researcher, where you can send it away to do something and come back to you with information. And those types of agent type tools are where the future is kind of heading for a lot of the experiences that we'll have as users. It's like allow the AI to go away and do something for me and bring the answer back, rather than me waiting for it to bring the answer back. So it's kind of working as supporting you in your job. So where you'll start seeing those kinds of things more is starting with things like knowledge, but getting into other things like perhaps being able to query other systems and get information. So give me an update on this customer, or tell me who the new sales opportunities in the next that have come in the last week, and give you sort of feedback on that. And then maybe the next question might be rank them in the order of priority for leads that have come in, so that I can determine which ones I want to spend my time focusing on. We'll also see agents coming into the Microsoft Dynamics space. And you'll see that crossing over between Dynamics and the Office applications, right? So one of the principles of modern work is that we don't want our users necessarily to leave where they are to go somewhere else to get the answer to something. We want them to be able to do it in line in the flow of the work that they're in. And I think in general, we'll see more of that from Microsoft. If you've got you'll see that appearing in different parts of the UI. You'll see things indicating more this is AI that you're working with here, and not just some sort of dialogue box that has a database behind it, perhaps. So you'll start seeing that, and I know my own personal experience is that you don't notice AI as much now as I did a year ago, because it's just there. It's part of the flow of work. It takes that time to develop the habit, and you'll start seeing that showing up. And I think you'll also see third-party add-ons and extensions, like we do for many Microsoft products, coming in that add value on top of what we're doing. So a great example of that is the knowledge bot that you've got in Powell Intranet, because it solves some of the problems that Microsoft haven't solved yet. It gives you control over your spend, for example, and you don't have to license all of the end users, which is two nice features of that. We'll see more of those kinds of tools. And by nature, though, AI's consumption-based model for licensing is going to be probably the norm, I would say, for a lot of it. So hang on to your credit card, or just be mindful of your consumption bill, so you don't set some limits around it, so that you don't
Absolutely.
have an accident.
Yeah, I think we've already seen. I mean, we used to see a lot of horror stories around consumption, around storage. Now we're seeing a lot of horror stories around consumption of tokens with AI. So I think it is quite important to be able to cap that and have more control around the spending.
Yeah, I think there's a thing here, which is that Microsoft tends to roll out the product first and the governance second. So if just because they've provided you with a tool doesn't necessarily mean there's a way to control and manage the costs with it straight away. It might come later, but don't assume that up front, and I think that's still where there's like a space for business-specific AI tools and tools that solve some of those problems for those types of use cases where you want you want to have more control of it. And I think you'll see more of that still in many specific places. Content creation would be another one. There's a lot of content creation tools out there. Powell's got one built into the internet pages, but there's other content creation and templating tools where traditionally it might have been, say, a Word document template generator that now is now AI enabled. So it's a little bit smarter, but again, you've still got to check what it generates, right? You don't just hit publish without reading what it wrote. Yeah.
Definitely. You mentioned another big topic where Microsoft is often leaving a lot of holes, which is governance. We see like tools like Teams, SharePoint, where these tools have been around for a long time now and they are widely adopted, and yet there's still a lot of holes when it comes to its governance and how we can really control it from an IT standpoint so it doesn't get out of control. And it is obviously, we keep hearing that the AI is as good as the data. And so I was wondering, is there any Microsoft tool you would advise IT leaders to really look out for, like when it comes to governance?
So within the Microsoft 365 platform, I think what you need to think about first is what is it you're trying to govern, or what keeps you awake at night. So, for example, almost every organization at some point in the last decade has done a migration from file servers to cloud. And when they did that, often what they did was they used their IT team or their suppliers' IT guys to lift and shift the data. And we all know that it's not the best approach to do it, but that's what they did nonetheless, right? So they lifted and shifted their data into SharePoint. And then basically what they did was they moved the mess in the process of doing that. Then they had an ungoverned environment for a period of time, and then COVID came along and we all started spinning up teams, creating workspaces for people, and we needed to be able to work remotely. And IT was under-resourced, so they didn't get to do the tidy up. And so we end up with this kind of environment where we know there's a problem, but we're not really quite sure how to fix it. So the challenge then becomes, you've already got a problem, regardless of whether you've got AI or not, you've already got a problem. But AI amplifies it, because what it does is it highlights the problem, because it can see, in the case of Copilot, anything that you can see as a user. It's tied to your identity, so it's in your context of view. If you happen to be able to see content that might be sensitive, then Copilot can see it. So what Microsoft provides is a few tools. One is Purview, and in Purview we have a thing called sensitive data types that allows us to scan our SharePoint environment. Now you need E5 licensing, which is the expensive part of this problem, right? So you need E5 licensing to be able to do it, but it allows you to scan your environment and identify potentially sensitive content, and you can create your own content. Classifiers, the New Zealand ones, specific ones are not great. So that's some room for improvement there. So that's the first tool. That gives you visibility of what you've got. The second question is like, how do we control it? So understanding the permissions and what's been shared, that's much harder. We need tools to do that. Microsoft doesn't really provide us with a good way to be able to see that. We do have SharePoint Advanced Management, which gives us some reporting, but it doesn't allow you to remediate in place, for example, and it's still quite it gives you some insight into the problem that you've got, but it's not going to solve it all for you. You still then need to go and actually sort out the mess, as it were, get things in order, your house in order. So there's two approaches you could take. One is you could try and tackle the monster problem, because there's millions of documents often in these environments and it's big. Or, and I'm not saying don't do that, but actually if that's a blocker for you introducing AI into your organization, then maybe what you need to do is think about the strategy and choose tools or options which allow you to use curated or specific sets of content, where you don't point it at everything, you point it at a subset of content. And that's probably the achievable option for most people, because the effort to do the first one can be huge. And often that's a prerequisite to rolling out Copilot properly. So being able to remediate that issue. So a chatbot scenario where you're pointing it at a knowledge base will give you immediate value, AI value from your AI, and enable your people to self-help, for example, without having to tidy up the entire mess. Well, you've given them that, they're only going to accept that for a certain period of time. So well they're getting their heads into that, tidy up that stuff and get yourself ready, because it's coming, right? There's no hiding from AI. At some point, somebody's going to, with enough clout, it's going to say, we need to turn it on, and it's going to happen. So we need to make sure we're prepared for that. And my advice is start doing that a couple of years ago. If you've done it in advance, you're in a good place. But if you haven't, then there's work to be done. Prioritize it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more with this. It's actually the approach we decided to take from day one with our product team here. It was really, okay, let's make sure that we're not asking customers to clean up the entire house from the get-go, but maybe start with a small room and keep that room tidy while you're cleaning up the rest of the house. So absolutely agree. And I guess a tricky question here, but do you foresee AI making governance harder or easier in the long term?
There was a saying during straight after COVID that COVID was the catalyst for digital transformation. Mm-hmm. I'd like to think that Copilot is the catalyst for governance, right? Because now there's like a justifiable business use case for this. We understand the problem. If you think you haven't got a problem, either you've been incredibly disciplined for many, many years, or you're being naive. So I'd say AI is a catalyst for improving the governance of our environments, and you'll get lots of other benefits too, not just the Copilot piece. And managing the content life cycle would be the other, which goes hand in hand with that. So governance of our sites, our teams, and our tools, and also managing the life cycle of the content that we've got, so that we are looking after it properly, treating it like it should be treated.
Yeah. Awesome. Looking ahead, I was wondering, if we look at a couple of years from now, how do you see AI evolving, and especially inside the Microsoft ecosystem, and more particularly around SharePoint, Teams, digital workplace tools? What are you most excited about?
So I think there's different levels, right? It's different. So there's different personas here. So let's start with an end user. As an end user, I will be able to find up-to-date, current, accurate content, and all of the stuff which is out of date, irrelevant, old, unloved, will be somewhere else, because AI would have helped solve the problem that is too big to do with humans. And I think that from an information management point of view, that's something that AI is going to enable more of. Is it going to be 2 years from now? Maybe I'm being optimistic, but I could see already we're seeing that those types of tools are helping solve some of those problems. If I put my administrator hat on, I'm a SharePoint admin or an M365 admin, it's going to help me get to those things that I don't currently have time to do. No one has time to go and look at the audit logs and see whether there's been some sort of violation, or there's or the governance and so on. We tend to be on the back foot because we're under-resourced and the environment is too big, and it's growing, right? Because in 2 years from now, Microsoft 365 in most organizations is going to be much bigger than it is now. Both in terms of the amount of content, the types of tools we use and so on, and keeping up with that is going to be big. So AI should help us to administer and manage the environment more. And if I looked at it from the point of view of an organization should see it as a strategic enabler. It should be enabling them to deliver more customer service, better relationships with the people inside the organization, smarter processes, and we should be thinking about it at a more strategic level rather than what am I doing tomorrow. And I think that's where we'll be, hopefully, for most organizations in 2 or 3 years' time from now.
Love it. Awesome. Steve, it's already been super insightful, and I'm sure there's so much listeners can take away from this chat already, but I just wanted to wrap it up with a couple of quick fire questions. So I wanted to ask you, if there was one buzzword we could retire today, which one would it be for you?
I think, it is. I think oversharing. I think I'd like to retire oversharing.
Love it.
We can't, but I'd like to.
Now, if Stratos was a superhero, which one would it be and why?
I think we are probably, we're probably. That's a hard question, actually. Also, maybe Superman. I think
Yeah.
we have as a company. I think Superman probably aligns with our values. We work with others to help them achieve things. We're kind of like we like to be helpful with it and catch people when they're falling. Right, so that's us. I think.
Love it. Great. And to finish it, what's one tool, it can be Microsoft or not, but one tool your team couldn't live without?
Probably the one tool we couldn't live without in our team would be SharePoint. It
Yeah.
underpins everything we do. Not only do we do it for a job, but it's our tool for where we manage all of our client information. We have our knowledge base. We share information with each other. We have, as a company that's been around for a long period of time, we have most of our team haven't been with us as long as the company has, but we have clients that we still support with systems, and our document management processes and so on are pretty key to making that happen. So yeah, SharePoint, I would say, is the tool that we couldn't live without.
Awesome. I thought you were going to talk about the coffee machine, but I'll take SharePoint as an answer.
Well, the coffee machine as well. The coffee machine is also, that's actually the most important piece of hardware in the office.
Yeah.
In terms of like software, SharePoint, but in terms of hardware, definitely the coffee machine.
Fair enough. Look, Steve, thanks so much for joining us today. Incredibly insightful conversation. And what really stands out for me is that, AI is not just a future concept anymore. It's here today. And we need to grasp it across organizations, across all industries. And we're really starting to see tangible outcomes. So that's really exciting. For anyone listening who wants to dive deeper, I was wondering, where can listeners get the latest about Stratos and your work?
So probably, I think the best place to follow us is actually on LinkedIn. We talk a lot on LinkedIn about what we do. So we're called Stratos Technology Partners, or you could find us on our website, which is www.stp.co.nz.
Perfect. Yeah, and go follow on LinkedIn. I know the Stratos team has a great newsletter. Go follow it. And of course, stay tuned for more Off the Cuff with Powell episodes coming out in the future. Thanks so much, Steve.
Thank you very much, Pierre.